I mean, learning an Opeth set in an afternoon to play with them.
Yeah.
I was at Metallica's second show, and they were a cover band. I was like, I don't think James was playing guitar at the time. I think it was just Dave was the only guitarist. So, I've just always kind of felt that Death helped spark three genres of metal.
So I'm here with Gene Hoglan from Death to All and pretty much almost every other metal band there is. Gene, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, brother.
So first of all, I mean, you're here with Death to All, kind of honoring the legacy of Death. When you joined the band back then, the band was already kind of pushing boundaries, and you could, in some sense, say that Death invented two genres, or like raw death metal in the start, and then, well, three, yeah. And then when you came, the band had already kind of pushed the boundaries on human, and then you come in. How was it to get into that? I mean, this must have been quite challenging and different from what you had been doing before.
Well, the thing was I mean, it's a pretty well-known story that I remember when I first heard Human. I was at a house party. Somebody threw the CD in, and it was just me and a dude on the couch over there, and we listened to the whole thing, and people are walking around all over the place. And at the end of the last song, I turned to that guy and I was like, damn, I'm glad I'll never play in this band. Because listening to Sean's kick-ass drumming, it was just like, wow, that's nuts. And so Sean and I actually had a lot of the same sort of genres of influence. I was a big jazz fusion fan and progressive rock fan as well. So there was a lot of things in Dark Angel, where I was coming from, where I wasn't... The drums to me in Dark Angel just became a kind of a secondary instrument in the band, because I was writing most of the riffs and I was playing a lot on the albums and stuff, playing guitar. So the drums were just kind of a backseat to the riffs. So when I was in Death, Chuck was taking care of the riffs. So all I had to do was concentrate on drums. Having Human as a really amazing template was something where we could really jump off on, like, wow, we've already got Sean's, approach has been established, and Chuck was okay with me doing whatever I wanted on the drums. So when I wrote all the drum parts, he was like, "These are great, you killer. I can play all my riffs over what you're doing, and it's all good for me. So just keep doing what you're doing." And so that's where the Individual Thought Patterns album came from, and where I got to stretch out a little bit and show some of my sort of prog influences, because I grew up on the same thing. Steve Gadd from the Al Di Meola band was a huge influence on the Individual Thought Patterns record, as was Neil Peart and stuff like that. I let those two influences really fly, kind of thing, back then. So,
but when you guys were making this music, I was wondering, like, did you ever think about that 30, 40 years later you would be still out there touring this, and that would be this big appetite for it? I mean, you guys have been touring quite a lot. I think this is going to be the third time we see you in, 5 years or something like that?
Yeah, I guess to sort of answer your question, that would be no. We never, you never expect, I mean, you hope for it, but you never expect that there's going to be a following for your music, even right then and there, let alone 30 years later. And since Death was pushing some boundaries back then, this was not a widely accepted move by Chuck, by the band Death, to put out an Individual Thought Patterns record or a Symbolic, because those albums, there wasn't really a template that they were following. So it's not like, okay, well, this sounds like that and that and that. Didn't really have that going on in death metal prior to this sort of thing, So that's where I do find that, I've just always kind of felt that Death helped spark three genres of metal. Of course, the obvious, the brutal death metal from the start, and then they were a part of the technical prog sort of approach with Sean's drumming mostly, because it was a pretty brutal riff album. Sean's drums, Paul's leads, took that into sort of a progressive metal sort of vein, and then the third genre being the mellow death, the melodic death metal, because nobody was really doing that either at the time. So, where Chuck was not afraid to, break some parts down to real clean parts. We were all sort of scratching our heads like, "Man, are you sure you want to do this?" He's like, I know what I'm doing. And so we just tried to make a couple of really good records that you hope people are going to like. And at that time, like I said, it wasn't like the world went, "Yes, listen to this." The world needed to sort of, I guess, maybe catch up. A number of other bands, I suppose, were listening and going, "Hey, we like that approach. We can kind of ingratiate some of that approach in what we're trying to do. We appreciate that." And so it was kind of like, you've got the forefathers doing it, and then it didn't quite catch on until you had a number of other bands coming along and putting their spin or their influence into it, which led to a lot of amazing bands. So
I just read through your discography, and one could publish a 500-page book with that. You played with almost everyone and any type of music. What has been the most challenging? Is there an album or a band or a style that has been the most challenging for you?
Well, I suppose I've always referred to this certain album by the band Mechanism. The album is called Inspired Horrific, and it was one of my many bands, but it was a band that I featured on my first DVD. But that band had the most challenging drums I had done up to that point, and I don't think I've done much that's more challenging since. A number of projects, I always do try to challenge myself with all the projects that I do, but some music just lends itself to more insane things. So the Mechanism album, Inspired Horrific, was definitely, it was my human sort of thing, doing some crazy odd time things. And I mean, learning an Opeth set in an afternoon to play with them, that was a challenge. And like playing with Forbidden, that's a killer challenge, playing not only Mr. Bostaff's stuff but Mr. Jacobs' stuff as well. And so those are, I'm always up for any kind of challenge. So and all, the strapping material, like City, that was a pretty crazy record. And that was pretty much my next album after Symbolic. So I remember when we put out City, a lot of people were complaining about my drumming on it, just going, "What happened? Like, his drumming on Symbolic was killer, and now it's like, well, now it's not, a million notes at all times. It's a different approach. You have to serve the song." And I understand how people don't quite understand about serving a song. They just want you to show off at all points of everything. But I mean, if you check out City, there's no lack of intensity on that record, man. That's a punch to the face 1,000 times. So there you go there. And then the next album was Demonic from Testament, which was also, that was me learning how to really serve a song. Eric Peterson was not looking for symbolic drums or strapping drums. He wanted drums for his project. So those are 3 different sounding records that sound different from the drum approach. And that's where I was just learning, like, you got to really serve the song and make sure that you don't have to show off, but make sure that what you're doing makes sense within the parameters of the song. So that's what I tried to do with those.
It's actually interesting when I listen to you, like, in some sense you're a jack of all trades in drumming. Like you can kind of, you go switch between different things.
Thank you. That would be something that I would much prefer to be known as, like, just a well-rounded drummer. Like, he could play some really soft, nice, beautiful little passages, or the brutal stuff. But that to me is like, just that's more of a compliment than, wow, he's the fastest, or he's got this or that. I've always tried to bring new concepts to drumming back from the Dark Angel days, from the Death days, from the Strapping days, just all the way, even, in approaches live and things like that and on record. I was always trying to, like I've mentioned this before, that drummers are supposed to steal, there's not a lot you can do on the drums, but, it's in the concept of songs. So we all steal, but I've always felt like if I'm going to steal something, then I'm going to have to put two things back into that pot. So, whether it be beats that nobody's heard, I always tried to do that with Dark Angel, try to write beats that nobody's played before. With Death, with individual thought patterns, is, to start, try to play some beats that nobody's done. And along with Symbolic and then Strapping as well, just keep going with that sort of approach. Try to, the two rides and that sort of thing, just always trying to elevate just myself, really. And if it elevates everybody else, then kick ass. But I'm just like, hey, let me try some things that I've never seen before, works for me kind of thing. So that was really just my approach. I wasn't trying to, make a big sea change in the drumming community, but I just tried to bring changes to what I could do and place myself out there in certain parameters where, hey, nobody's tried this, nobody's tried that, nobody's tried that. Like the double bass pattern that goes along with the riff, I started that back in like 1987 or something, 86, when I was writing riffs, and I could write guitar riffs, I could write patterns on the drums. So combine both of those, and then you got the and I was like, hey, that's something I've never heard anybody do before. I mean, it could be somewhere, but I'm not familiar with it. So try that. And so I did a lot of that, so, and now that's kind of a trope in metal. That's kind of a lot of folks do that. And that was just like, hey, maybe this could be Dark Angel's little, like, add a little something into the pot. Hey, they brought this style. Nobody's doing this, but, it seems to have caught on. So there you go.
Talking about that double bass, I did a deep dive on Show No Mercy on my YouTube channel some 2 years ago or something. It had an anniversary or some 3 years probably.
Right.
And I came across this story about you in the studio. I mean, and is that true that you were holding Lombardo's bass drum steady on the floor, and then you were kind of trading off each other with the double kickers?
Well, what that was the holding the bass drum was for Chemical Warfare, which came out on the Haunting the Chapel EP. And that was just because there was no carpet on the floor or anything, so he was just walking. So I went in there, I held his drums together. On Show No Mercy, I was there for that recording, just tons. I was their pal. It's like, hey man, come on down to the studio, hang out. When it was time for Jeff and Kerry to do their vocals for Evil Has No Boundaries, live, they both had microphones, and they would both be something like, it wasn't super heavy. It was like, those guys going, evil, my words defy, evil. It just wasn't really like heavy. And Tom and Kerry were sitting on a couch, and I was just standing right there. I was like, have you guys ever thought of maybe like getting a big gang of dudes in there and just going, evil, a big gang chorus kind of thing? And they looked at each other. They're like, great idea. No time like the present. All right, everybody here, get in the booth and, sing evil, and so I kind of orchestrated that, that everybody knew what to do. And so, there's Hanneman singing, there's Johnny Araya singing, there's my buddy Joel, he's in there, and another few guys, maybe Dave as well. So, that was my Show No Mercy experience, but that was the second thrash metal album ever. So I am OG thrash all the way down to it. So
you've been there from the beginning.
Indeed, yeah, man. I definitely saw it create and grow. I was at Metallica's second show. James Hetfield told me that was their second show. And they were a cover band. I was like, pretty cool cover band, but they were doing Diamond Head covers, and like I don't even know if they were doing Bungie covers at the time, but the band doing some You know, maybe Blitzkrieg, maybe. But yeah, they're doing some covers, a bunch of Diamond Head covers, and they didn't have many original songs. And I don't think James was playing guitar at the time. I think it was just Dave was the only guitarist. So OG thrash metaler from day one, totally.
Okay, so the last thing here, Gene, you're stranded on a deserted island. You have a solar-powered CD player with you, and you can take 3 CDs with you to that island. What 3 CDs are you taking with you to a deserted island?
Yeah, I'm always being put on the spot. Well, tell you what, I'm just gonna randomly choose from the collection, and CD number 1. Ooh, it would have to be At the End of a Century by Stevie Wonder, because that one it's a box set of CD. You didn't say anything about no box set.
Yeah.
And it's got 100 songs on it, so
Okay.
I'll pick that one. So who else's box set is out there? Well, you know, you got to crank up some metal, so something's got to be. Sure, let's go with Show No Mercy by Slayer. Why not? And then album number 3, it would have to be Gorefest, Erase.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the heavy one. False came later. Erase was the heavy. That one, I love that record too. So there you go. That's just a random. Closed my eyes, pulled something out. Gorefest, here we go.
Yeah, just before the plane crashes, you reach into the CD box and that's what you take.
And that's what I grabbed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go.
Okay, Gene, thanks a lot. Thanks for
very
taking the time.
I
Nice to
appreciate
meet
it.
you.
Nice meeting you.
Take care and have a great show.
Thank you. Enjoy the
Thank you.
show. Man.
Thank you.
Stay awake. We're going on late.
Yeah, we will.